Mankind is one, the earth is one country, ye are the leaves of one branch, the fruit of one tree. Mankind is one, the earth is one country, ye are the leaves of one branch, the fruit of one tree. Set your faces for unity. Let the light of His radiance shine upon you. Gather together and for the sake of God, root out contention amongst you. Mankind is one, the earth is one country, ye are the leaves of one branch, the fruit of one tree. Mankind is one, the earth is one country, ye are the leaves of one branch, the fruit of one tree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Welcome, everyone. Today, what we will do, the program is composed of two parts. The first part is moral teachings of the Baha'i Faith, which, according to Baha'u'llah and according to all manifestations of God, prophets of God, are essentially the same. A little different based on location and who said it, but it seems to me, and you may agree, as we go through some of these, that they are so that they are like updated version of the Old Testament or Quran, so with regard to the moral teachings. So they're essentially the same. So what we'll do, everyone would read a passage. Sorry, okay. We'll read a passage. We will reflect on it, and then we will continue with a few more passages from the hidden words, which are also moral teachings. The first 20 minutes or so, and then for 10 minutes we'll chat on it if there's any questions, any thoughts. And then we'll spend perhaps a bit more time on what we call social teachings of religion, which, according to Baha'u'llah, changes according to the needs of the time. So we'll try to spend a little bit more time. And also I'd like to mention, I will ask Richard to be kind enough to read that passage. The relationship between Unity people and Baha'is really began in 1912. I don't know if you know it now. And it began when Abdul-Baha, he was the eldest son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith. He was in prison and in house arrest for like 57, 58 years. When he was 9, he went to jail. When he was 65, 66, he came out of prison. And the prisoners were the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire. Two groups were trying to control this band of a few people. So at that time there were a few Baha'is in the US, I don't know how many, maybe 200-300 maybe, and a 200-300 maybe in Europe, and they insisted that they should bring out Baha. So it's amazing, that by itself to me is a miracle, that this man would spend all his time in house arrest or in jail with his father. He came and he spoke in churches, synagogues, social clubs, universities, from New York University to Stanford, Chicago here. And I'm going to ask Richard to read the passage particularly that he spoke at one of the first Unity churches in the US. So please go ahead. We're going to start reading the moral teachings of the Baha'i Faith, which is all faiths.
The betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds, through commendable and seemly conduct. Raj, did you want to talk about each one as we do them, or just go around and read them?
If you go around and read them, and then if everyone has any thoughts, please hold it. after we finish it, then we'll chat.
Beware, O people of Baha, lest you walk in the ways of them whose words differ from their deeds.
O son of being, bring thyself to account each day, or thou art summoned to a reckoning.
Say, O brethren, let deeds, not words, be your adorning.
Holy words and pure and goodly deeds ascend unto heaven, the heaven of celestial glory.
Let your eye be chaste, your hand faithful, your tongue truthful, and your heart enlightened.
They who dwell within the tabernacle of God and are established upon the seats of everlasting glory will refuse, though they be dying of hunger, to stretch their hands and seize unlawfully the property of their neighbor, however vile and worthless he may be.
A kindly tongue is the lodestone of the hearts of man. It is the bread of the Spirit. It clotheth the words with meaning. It is the foundation of the light of wisdom and understanding.
O ye beloved of the Lord, in this sacred dispensation, conflict and contention are in no wise permanent. Every aggressor deprives himself of God's grace. Nothing whatever can in this day inflict a greater harm upon his cause than dissension
and strife.
Contention, estrangement, and apathy among the loved ones of God.
Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path.
When a thought of war comes, oppose it by a stronger thought of peace. A thought of hatred must be destroyed by a more powerful thought of love.
Backbiting quenches the light of the heart and extinguisheth the life of the soul.
Breathe not the sins of others, so long as thou thyself is a sinner.
Speak not evil, that thou mayest not hear it spoken unto thee, and magnify not the faults of others, that thine own faults may not appear great.
O son of being, how couldst thou forget thine own faults, and busy thyself with the faults of others? Whoso doeth this is accursed of me.
I think you agree that there's not really much new in here, except that there's re-emphasizing. Partly, Baha'u'llah says that the re-emphasis in all religions is not because God forgets, not because, as I mentioned earlier, Moses knew any less than Jesus, or Buddha knew any less than Moses. It's because man forgets. And because man forgets, renewal of religion is necessary. That is the reason for that. The renewal of the same essential messages of truthfulness, of seeking peace, of trying to avoid conflicts of any kind, not backbiting, not fault finding, and things of nature. Any thoughts that you'd like to share, and we'll read some more moral teaching before we go to Messiah.
Just a thought I had. There was a shift from where we started to where we ended that I see is a shift in Christianity as well. And maybe these are out of order, but there seems to be a day of reckoning, a day of accountability, where you're going to be held accountable earlier on. That shifted to basically a thought about karma. You're going to be basically punished by your own actions. As you judge, you're going to be judged. And I wondered if that was pretty typical of Baha'i teachings. Is it more that you will be punished by your lies, people will lie about you, or is it on the day of reckoning when you transcend, you're going to be held accountable by the great supreme being? Or is it both?
It's probably both. My understanding mostly though is that it is mainly us, which means heaven and hell from the Baha'i perspective is not a place, but rather it's based on our action. The more peaceful, the more harmonious, the more loving, compassionate we are as human beings, the more our soul is free, both here and when we depart. And therefore, if it's just like a bird which is free and goes toward eternity, free of that karma, free of that pain, or that we are in that darkness and therefore we are held down by that karma until we're freed from it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that these aren't in any particular order. And the thing about accounting on a daily basis, that's one of our teachings, is that the longest you can feel bad about anything or guilty about anything is 24 hours. Because you come to account at the end of the day and start over the next day.
That's the reason for this continuous regular praying and being in a prayerful mode. And I wanted to say that last time we talked about prayers and the importance of being in a prayer mode 24 hours a day. And, I said it because we sleep 7-8 hours a day. But believe me, this past week, it was probably because I mentioned it. 2-3 nights a night, during the night I woke up and I wasn't in that prayerful mode. I would say a prayer just as I'm sleeping. So it had something to do with this class. Yeah. So I was in prayerful mode 24 hours a day, at least this past week.
Can I continue? Please, is it okay?
Sure.
Please stop me. So with the idea of 24-hour period, is there a forgiveness of self? That I'm in such a state that I release that which I did yesterday that I have judged as wrong, so I've forgiven myself?
Right.
Or is it a forgiveness from a being?
Asking forgiveness from the being, but again, just like Jesus said, we are all made in the image of God. Part of that God is within us. And therefore, a lot of it we have to forgive ourselves to be able to continue the next day. And this accountability that, okay, I've done this, I guess Leslie mentioned last time, I sort of account for myself. What did I do wrong? How can I do better the next day? And a continuous improvement, as long as you're on that improvement path, seems to be the path toward holiness, toward becoming holy, remaining holy. Now, if you read more passages from the hidden words, I'll give you my copy because I put these paper clips on it. And what you'll do, you can have that one. But I have marked the ones as a selection that you want us to read. If everyone would read one page, and actually you may, Ms. Carson may like to start reading the beginning passage of the hidden words, which Baha'u'llah tells us that this is the essence of all religions. It's all one and the same. We forget, we change, we modify, we become different sects. But this is the essence. So listen to what Baha'u'llah calls the essences, and everyone just look at front and back of this one. The ones that I've marked, please read those.
Okay, so you want me to read this top page and then...
No, and then for the next one, there's two.
Okay.
You can open you can mention the number. This is from the very beginning of Hidden Words. Page 1, and these are the numbers. Let me also mention that when I said that Baha'u'llah has composed 100 volumes of books, some of them are this short, but this is really 2 books. And the reason is that part of it was revealed in Farsi, Persian, that is, of course, translated into English, and the second part was from Arabic into English. So, and then, as you see, these are very short, but they're very meaningful. So after each one, let's just be silent for about 5 seconds before we go to the next one.
He is the glory of glories. This is that which hath descended from the realm of glory, uttered by the tongue of power and might, and revealed unto the prophets of old. We have taken the inner essence thereof, and clothed it in the garment of brevity, as a token of grace unto the righteous, that they may stand faithful unto the covenant of God, may fulfill in their lives his trust, and in the realm of spirit obtain the gem of divine virtue. O Son of Spirit, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty ancient, imperishable, and everlasting.
So purity of heart, according to Baha'u'llah, is first and foremost. Before anything else, somebody who is in the path of faith should try to cleanse this heart.
O Son of Spirit, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Turn not away therefrom, if thou desirest me, and neglect it not, that I may confide in thee. By its aid thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others. And thou shalt know of thine own knowledge, and not thou knowledge of thy neighbor. Ponder this in my heart, how it behooveth thee to be. Verily, justice is my gift to thee, and the sign of my loving kindness. Set it then before thine eyes.
So according to him, if we are pure in heart, and justice comes with it, justice follows it. You know, the world is suffering from lack of justice. You know, the people who are criminal who go free, and the other way around. And there are people who go and judge them. Part of it is because perhaps the hearts are not pure, and we are not really, we're not acting as children of God when we are in that jury. We're not in the prayerful mode, maybe. So that's what he says. The second commandment is we have to be just in what we say, what we do.
O Son of Man, veiled in my moral being, and at thy ancient eternity of my essence. I knew thee, love for thee, therefore I created thee. Have thee engraved on mine image, and revealed to thee my beauty. O Son of Man, I loved thy creation, hence I created thee. Wherefore do thy love me, and I may name thy name, and fill thy soul with the spirit of life.
And this is a question of that we are made in the image of God. That's that next one. Now I have marked the ones to be read, and if you could, as you pass it on, indicate the number that you're reading so that the friends who have the hidden words, they can follow.
Page 25.
You mean passage 25?
Oh, is it passage 25 at the, oh, I see, okay, so you want me to start at passage 22 then?
The ones that
I see.
So passage 22 is it?
Passage 22.
22, okay.
O Son of Spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself.
Abased
thyself. Rise then unto that which thou hast created.
I guess it's important to mention this one particularly because you know, in many religions, we are taught that we're sinful, we're this, we're that. We're not even, we're bad people. But Baha'u'llah emphasized over and over again that everyone is created pure and holy. We're all holy. It is bad training, it is bad environment that messes people up. And it is our job to heal that wound that appears. So that's maybe something, some maybe modification, according to Baha'u'llah, of misconception of what Jesus or Buddha had said or had meant, according to Baha'u'llah, that we are all created holy and pure, and then the world messes up. So there you go. Which number?
23. O Son of the Supreme, to the Eternal I call thee, yet thou dost seek that which perished, that has made thee turn away from our desire and seek thine own. O Son of Man, transgress not thy limits, nor claim that which becometh thee not. What is it?
Beseemeth thee not.
Beseemeth thee not. Prostrate myself before the, what is that?
Before the countenance of thy God.
Of thy God and the Lord of thy might and power.
And a lot of teaching also deals with humility. It says that a lot of bad things that happen, including wars, is because of human arrogance. As soon as we become humble, we're not able to hurt anybody else. So again, the same teaching of Buddha and Jesus in new wording. Okay.
25. O Son of Spirit, vaunt not thyself over the poor, for I lead them on the way, and behold thee in the evil plight, and confound thee forevermore.
Yeah, a lot of emphasis to take care of the poor. Our responsibility is to take care of the poor.
Okay, 26. O son of being, how couldst thou forget thine own faults and busy thyself with the faults of others? Whoso doeth this is accursed of me. 27.
Yeah, it's so easy to forget our own faults, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
To look at somebody else and he is not a good guy. Look, I'm perfect. So it's a lot of emphasis again in holy teachings of let's try to correct ourselves, and then everything will fall in place.
27. O son of man, breathe not the sins of others so long as thou art thyself a sinner. Shouldst thou transgress this command, accursed wouldst thou be, and to this I bear witness. 29. O son of being, ascribe not to any soul that which thou wouldst not have ascribed to thee, and say not that which thou dost not. This is my command unto thee. Do thou observe it.
What number?
48.
Okay.
O son of man, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude under my decree and patience under my trials.
And that's the idea of suffering.
And, O
Particularly-
son of man, if adversity befall thee not in my path, how canst thou walk in the ways of them that are content with my pleasure? If trials afflict thee not in thy knowing to meet thee, how wilt thou attain the light in my love for my beauty?
And then indicating that suffering is good for the soul. Suffering in the path of perfection. And particularly in the beginning of all religions, we see what happened to Christians, what happened to Buddhists. And same kind of things is happening, has happened to Baha'is. Baha'is faith is new in the history of religion. So many thousands of Baha'is, its birthplace, which was Iran, have been killed, have been massacred, and they continue to suffer because they see it as a threat to the established system. And that has happened throughout the history of man. And then the point for the believer of any faith is to accept it, accept it in the way of not become hateful to those who do those things. And that through patience and perseverance and remaining calm under the most difficult situations, we can transform others. I need to tell you the story, this short story, which is really the story of my wife's grandfather. I mean, I thought to my friend here. And that is, he was from a city in the center of Iran, which is called Yazd. A couple of people have Persian background, they know. And he loved Baha'u'llah's prayers, and he would chant them. Particularly in the Eastern countries, they chant. So they chant these prayers going to work and coming back from work. So one night, a number of hoodlums and Muslim fanatics came and stabbed him and stoned him to death. And then they came and burnt his house, and then the wife and 2 kids were stranded, and they walked for months back then, 78 years ago, until they reached another town in the southern part of Iran. That's Iran. And they went to that city, and he worked as a laborer. He was a teenager with his sister and mother for years. And this is one of those amazing stories. And then they were like 18, 19, I believe, my wife's father was. That one day, somebody, and at that time, and even now, but now perhaps there's a little rule, not that much. But back then, if somebody killed a Baha'i or did damage to the Baha'i, they probably got a prize for it as well. So one day, one person knocks at the door. This city is like 200 miles south of the other city. Knocks at the door, and he said he wanted to make sure that these are the same kids. And this man was the ringleader of those hoodlums who had killed that man. And he falls to the ground, weeping, and saying that I have understood the truth of Baha'u'llah's writings, and I've come here to ask you to forgive me. So this is the process of transformation of even the vilest people. Killer. So that's why rehabilitation is so important. Just putting people in jail, put them on, they say that, put them in jail and what is it? Lock it and forget it.
Throw away the key.
Throw away the key. Or execute them doesn't work. Human transformation happens through either their own transformation or through society helping to transform. Otherwise, violence and hatred would continue. So the lesson of religion is to accept suffering, to work for people's transformation, even the vilest of people. That has been the pathway. I mentioned particularly Buddha and Jesus and Baha'u'llah. Now I say that, I don't usually repeat all the manifestations. I recently explained the reason. Like Moses or Muhammad. Baha'u'llah's explanation is that they are equally holy, but their time was a more violent time and a more disorderly time, and therefore there was need for them to be also like military leaders. There are, in the most civilized countries, there are also presidents who have been military leaders and who have orchestrated the war, but it could have been a just war. So from Baha'u'llah's perspective, any verse that they have said, particularly those verses, which is so dangerous that we see today, is because of exigencies of the time. And that perpetuation of those kind of verses, whether we see it in Old Testament or in Quran, is dangerous for human spiritual health today. We have to do something about it, which is actually the main mission of Baha'u'llah. He says actually in one of his passages, we have blotted out, this is his actual word, we have blotted out from all scriptures any passage which has been the cause of hatred and war. And he says to humankind, listen to this carefully, that unless you blot it out from your minds, this violence that we have seen in the past 200-300 years, in particular, will continue unabated. I think that's an important thing to remember with regard to what we are studying here. All right, let's go on to the next one.
Okay, looks like 53.
53, yeah.
Passage 53. O son of being, if poverty overtake thee, be not sad, for in time the Lord of wealth shall visit thee. Fear not abasement, for glory shall one day rest on thee. Number 55. O son of being, busy not thyself with this world, for with fire we test the gold, and with gold we test our servants.
This flesh is temporary. The sooner we realize this, the better our life becomes and the life of those around us. It gives us humility.
It's where it's marked with the
Okay, number 68. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts, know ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory.
So the question of oneness. Baha'u'llah believes, and believes unity as well, and that has been the mission and vision of all manifestations of God, that eventually there will be peace on earth as it is in heaven, as Jesus has said, and Baha'u'llah calls it the golden age of human era. And he claims that if we put to practice the 100 volumes of what he has written, and he has also written, we'll go through some passage of it next time, to both religious leaders, Muslim leaders and Christian leaders of the time, and also the major kings from Russia to Prussia, Germany, France, England, and US at the time. I guess it was the time, around the time of Lincoln. That he basically gives what he called the framework for the new world order, which will bring us to the golden age of humanity. So we'll go through some of those next time. Okay? Where are we next?
We're in part 2, the hidden words of
So part 2 again, it starts with number 1. So what number?
Well, actually starts on number 10.
Number 10. Okay.
We're in part 2.
Part 2 number 10.
Passage.
O son of desire, give ear unto this. Never shall mortal eye recognize the everlasting beauty, nor the lifeless heart delight in aught but in the withered limb. For like seeketh like, and taketh pleasure in the company of its kind.
If we become too worldly, there are many passages in this regard in the New Testament as well, and Old Testament, that we cannot become holy. We cannot become, we cannot understand what our mission and vision. Actually, I went to Baptist church last Sunday, and the sermon was about this particular subject, which was very interesting. I'll tell you something about that experience.
Can I ask a question about that?
Please do. Whenever you'd like to chat, please do.
Holy versus unholy.
Yeah.
What is the distinction as drawn by Baha'i? Unity would say you cannot be unholy, but you can hold a thought of being separate, which would have an unholy consequence or experience. You mentioned the word becoming holy. Is it our job as human beings to strive to become holy? Is it attainable? Or are we born that way and we forgot?
My understanding is that he tells us we're born holy. We become defiled through materialism, through arrogance, lack of humility and all that. But we can always forgive ourselves and account for our misdeeds and become better. Actually, in many ways, Baha'u'llah uses the word evil just a very few times to mainly indicate that evil is like darkness. And darkness does not exist. Darkness is the absence of light. When this room is dark, we put light. So it says whenever you see darkness, whenever you think somebody's doing bad things, shed some light. You know, if somebody is aggressive, somebody is fighting, and you go and punch the guy some more, it doesn't make it any better. So his advice, the advice of Jesus, is the same thing. That idea of taking the other side of your cheek is that idea.
And that's a direct parallel to unity teachings. Shine the light. Their darkness is not anything except, and sin and evil are just
Yes.
a belief in separation from the light.
Yes, yes. I'd like to mention this, we had a little of this conversation, we're continuing with that, and that is, I made a note of it to mention it here, and that is that because the essence of all these faiths is one and the same, that wherever we think there's a difference, I and Richard discussed this with it, is because of our misperceptions. If there's anything, I guess this which can be considered as a new teaching of Baha'u'llah, because of social teaching. One of it is what he calls that, you remember 18th century Voltaire? One of his teachings was, that was the age of enlightenment. And the thought was that I don't agree with you, but what? But I tolerate you. Which was quite an improvement, right? From the age of Inquisition and the fighting of Protestants and Catholic and all that. So that was a great thing. But Baha'u'llah says, this is the time of consultation. And a lot of his teachings, actually maybe 100, 200 passages on the question of ways and means of consultation and the fact that we need to go beyond this level of tolerance. He said one of his writings says, through clash of ideas, the sparkle of truth becomes manifest. And if we think that we are holy, we are from Him, we are made in His image, we don't have any personal agenda. And actually he says, whenever you have ideas, put this idea in the middle of the table and get the self out of it. And then when you're detached, a lot of teaching on detachment, sincerity, sanctification of your soul, then there's nothing to argue about. That's an idea. You keep discussing and discussing until you become to an agreement, and then you move on from in that respect. All right, shall we continue?
Number 11. O son of dust, blind thy eyes that thou mayest behold my beauty. Stop thine ears that thou mayest hearken unto the sweet melody of my voice. Empty thyself of all learning, that thou mayest partake in my knowledge, and sanctify thyself from riches, that thou mayest obtain a lasting share from the ocean of my eternal wealth. Blind thy eyes, that is, to all save my beauty. Stop thine ears to all save my word. Empty thyself of all learning, save thy knowledge of me. That with a clear vision, a pure heart, and an attentive ear, thou mayest enter the courts of my holiness.
I think that's a very important passage in the sense that he's basically telling us that if we become too full of ourselves, I'm knowledgeable, I've read all the holy books, I've read this and this, then that becomes a deprivation for us. Because we think we know, therefore we don't allow anybody else to even converse, because I'm the one who knows. So that's what it says, empty yourself of even this pseudo-knowledge that you think you know. When you are in a gathering, a holy gathering of friends like this, people who are made in the image of God, empty yourself of all learning so that you can learn. Otherwise that's a barrier. Even that learning becomes a barrier. You know, so many sincere rabbis who kept arguing and not accepting Jesus. And same thing through the history of religion, in one way or another. That's the barrier.
Rumi was mentioned empty yourself many times.
Many times.
So this reminded me of Rumi.
Yeah. Well, Rumi, as you know, is a 13th century Persian poet who at that time wanted to correct some of the, what we call, either the fallacies of Islam or the extremism of Islam. And among the things that he said was that I took the essence from Quran and it's a word that Baha'u'llah would never use. But he said, I threw the rest to the dogs. I threw the bones to the dogs. You know, when he says, kill this guy, kill that guy, which was part of the military attempts that he had, that's still these ISIS groups and mullah groups in Iran are continuing. Back then in the 13th century, says, no, that's not religion anymore. That was a military action at the time. And with regard to this emptying yourself, he has many passages. Let me see if I can remember that. He says basically, if you get rid of yourself, he says, if you get rid of yourself, then you'll be able to see God. With self, you will never be able to see God. He has many passages in that regard. Thank you.
This is passage 44.
44.
O companion of my throne, hear no evil and see no evil. Abase not thyself, neither sigh and weep. Speak no evil, that thou mayest not hear it spoken unto thee. And magnify not thy faults of others, that thine own faults may not appear great. And wish not the abasement of anyone, that thine own abasement be not exposed. Live then the days of thy life that are less than a fleeting moment, with thy mind stainless, thy heart unsullied, thy thoughts pure, and thy nature sanctified, so that, free and content, thou mayest put away this mortal frame, and repair unto thy mystic paradise, and abide in the eternal kingdom forevermore.
And that's sin covering eye. Not bothering others the best you can. Okay, do we have any more?
That's the only one that's marked here.
Okay, and then there are a few more, where the paper clips are. Okay, there are a couple more paper clips. Now, the hidden words ends, maybe there's 50 pages or so. And then there are, here at the end of this particular version, we have put a couple of prayers and passages that I thought would be interesting to read as well before we go to the next part. Do you have a prayer? Or Karen, would you like?
Okay. O son of my handmaid, be not troubled in poverty, nor confident in riches, for poverty is followed by riches, and riches are followed by poverty. Yet to be poor in all save God is a wondrous gift. Belittle not the value thereof, for in the end it will make thee rich in God, and thus thou shalt know the meaning of the utterance, in truth ye are the poor, and the holy words, God is the all-possessing, shall even as the true morn break forth gloriously resplendent upon the horizon of the lover's heart, and abide secure on the throne of wealth.
Like Jesus and Buddha again, he has many passages in warning the rich. Okay, so where are we now? Maybe just to save time, if you go to the last passage, which is really in this one page, it's called the wars to live by. At the very end of it, let me give you this one right here.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this one basically Baha'u'llah puts it together in one page as to this is the way I expect people to live their lives.
Be generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity. Be worthy of the trust of thy neighbor and look upon him with a bright and friendly face. Be a treasure to the poor, an admonisher to the rich, an answerer of the cry of the needy, a preserver of the sanctity of thy pledge. Be fair in thy judgment and guarded in thy speech. Be unjust to no man, and show all meekness to all men. Be as a lamp unto them that walk in darkness, a joy to the sorrowful, a sea for the thirsty, a haven for the distressed, an upholder and defender of the victim of oppression. Let integrity and uprightness distinguish all thine acts. Be a home for the stranger, a balm to the suffering, a tower of strength for the fugitive. Be eyes to the blind and a guiding light under the feet of the erring. Be an ornament to the countenance of truth, a crown to the brow of fidelity, a pillar of the temple of righteousness, and a breath of life to the body of mankind, an ensign of the hosts of justice, a luminary above the horizon of virtue, a dew to the soil of the human heart, an ark on the ocean of knowledge, a sun in the heaven of bounty, a gem on the diadem of wisdom, a shining light in the firmament of thy generation, and a fruit upon the tree of humility.
Basically, a summary of a lot of things that we read. We got the moral teaching of all faiths. Well, I thought this would not take more than 30 minutes. It was all my fault. I just cannot stop talking. It's wonderful. So the second part, I thought we'd need to spend more time. Would it be okay to go over time, like 5 minutes? We'll try to end at 8:15 or 10. This is what we have here on the syllabus. It gives you the list, and you have it in that book on the social teaching of the Baha'i Faith. Let's basically first look at it, and then, because we are running out of time, Rich will be kind enough to read that. I'll show you. So these are what Baha'u'llah calls the social teachings of Baha'i Faith, which in some ways could be different from past religions. He starts with the question of oneness of humanity. And then he goes in some of his writings through the history of religion. The time of Moses, the attempt was tribal unity. Humanity was so spread out. They just wanted tribal Israel to come together. Time of Jesus, it was mostly feudalism. At least you in the city tried to get along. By the time of Muhammad, just through the history of religion, Muhammad, it was nation building. And a lot of that, those military actions, they're trying to make a nation out of that chaotic situation of Africa, at least. There was nothing, just nomads. So they were making nations. So we went, actually, one step earlier, if you look at the concept of Noah and family life, Moses and tribalism, Jesus and feudalism, bringing cities together, Islam and beginning of nationalism, and Baha'u'llah says now then is the time for global unity. Peace on earth as it is in heaven, as Jesus has given the prophecy, and he says, I have a plan for bringing this to reality. It is through this sanctification of us as human beings, and through this process of what he calls that keeping the covenant of God sanctified so that there won't be any division, and heart to heart, all across the globe, the same way that followers of Jesus did. He said you should go to all the villages everywhere across the planet. It's not important, they call themselves initially on Baha'i. Baha'i actually means, the literal meaning of it is one who follows the light. So that the people of the planet will be followers of the light. And see that that light is oneness of God, oneness of the essence of religion, and therefore oneness of humanity, because we're all children of the same God. That we teach, we preach, but we have to put it to work. And this is those social teachings. So it begins with this idea of oneness of humanity. B, it says independent search for truth. You may recall, particularly the history of Christianity. If I'm wrong, please let me know. That until 15th century, Christians were not allowed to read the Bible. Is that right? That's correct. 15th century, right? Same thing in Judaism. I don't know how long they continued. So, of course, Baha'u'llah was 19th century. But Baha'u'llah says that my first teaching is what he calls independent, unfettered search for truth without a mullah or ayatollah or pastor or priest anyway. Humanity has reached the age of maturity And we have to search sincerely. And if we all search independently and sincerely, we all come to the same truth. That clash of ideas, this with sincerity, with purity, with detachment, with sanctity of the soul. He says, item by item, we reach that goal. So that's why he calls it another social teaching, which is different from the past. Not because Jesus didn't know, but because at that time, when 99% of people are uneducated, they needed to have somebody to tell them. But then it led to those 500 years of Inquisition and all the bad things that are happening in Islam, in the world of Islam. So that's why that is very important. Then, of course, we talked about this idea of unity and the purpose of religion, but I guess I mentioned last time that he says, basically, we mentioned one passage, that religion should be a cause of love and affection. If you go to any church, synagogue, mosque, that they teach you hate, his advice is, get out of there. You don't belong there. You're a child of God, right? If they teach you hatred, why do you go there? That's not part of you. So,
is it hatred of any kind, of any human being, regardless of
yes,
their life?
Hatred of anyone, any kind, whether it's Osama or Hitler. Even those, I said, they need to be punished. But the war justice, they need to incarcerate them. Before Mr. Chamberlain goes and negotiates with them for 2-3 years and starts World War II, we have to have justice, we have to have some sense, right? All of those things, our politics is also interesting. But that's the idea. It works, but we have to be cognizant of our humanity, of our spirit, of our spirituality. We always need to think, to be in a prayerful mode and work for the oneness of mankind. So that's the essence of that teaching. For each one of them, he basically has a book. Now, that one, number 4, D, harmony of science and religion, I guess that also has become part of your practice. This is very much emphasized. He basically says, I'll say it's a couple passages of his, that he says, if, again, you go to a church or synagogue or a mosque that teaches you something that your pure soul and the spirit says it doesn't make sense. The war was, I mentioned it in the interfaith group of pastors. No, they were so kind, they did not react violently. But I said that when you open the Holy Book and it says the world was made in 6 days, and the 7th day God rested. And when you go to the next page and it says that the woman was created from the rib of Adam, it doesn't make sense. When you go to the next page, the Jehovah's Witness came to my door, knocked at the door. Do you know why we don't live to be 900 years? I said, why? And she opens the Bible. Here Jesus says that we live to be 900 years old. Here it says that this guy who lived 860 years, and so on. I said, my friend, these are stories. These have deeper meanings. Why do you believe in this kind of things? And Baha'u'llah says that these kind of beliefs, whether it is in your holy book or somebody else's holy book, are dangerous to your health, to your emotional, social, spiritual health. So I know the question tolerance says that everybody is in their own church, they do their own thing, and leave them alone. I went to a Baptist church this past Sunday, and they came to the Revelation, and they're saying wonderful things with regard to chastity and purity, and we have to be ready when Jesus comes. When we're good soldiers of Jesus, we will see him and all that, which is all fine. And it so happens, they came to my favorite passage. They came to Revelation. And the first page of Revelation, I'm sure you remember, Jesus says that I will come through the clouds, right? Riding on a horse, on a white horse. And all the righteous will see me, right? Common sense to any human being says the only thing I said, I sat down, believe me, I'm talkative, but at that point I sat down like a polite child and I listened. I said, do you think all the 7 billion people will see him when he's riding on a cloud, on a horse? And the pastor said, yes. I said, how? And he says, because it is God, he can do everything. Baha'u'llah says these kind of belief systems are dangerous to the human heart, human soul. Anything that doesn't make sense, you're made in the image of God. Don't believe it. Confront it. Say that either there's deeper meaning or it's simply not true. You probably know better than I do that Old Testament was written in the course of 800 years. At the time when majority of human beings could not read and write. Right? A few mullahs, rabbis wrote a few things, passed it on, until the Persian king, that's the only thing I'm proud of, have the Persian origin, that Cyrus the Great sent all these rabbis to Israel, to today's Israel, Palestine, Jerusalem, and asked them to write the Holy Book. And after 800 years, they wrote the Holy Book. So a lot of these things are stories and parables and those things they collected. And of course, for a lot of them, Baha'u'llah's explanation. One of his books is explaining the Holy Books. Old Testament, New Testament, and Quran. It's called the Book of Certitude. Next time we'll just read a couple passages from it, which is very interesting. 200 pages. He wrote in the course of 48 hours, responding to a lot of Christians and Muslims.
So I think it's so important, letter B, that you talked about, the independent search for truth. And that's not a new idea. It's definitely a unity idea, but it's not new to us. Buddhists teach that. Take the principles, take the stories, take what you have been taught, what you have been told, and decipher if it is true for you, if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense. Find the God of your understanding, which is why I so much resonate with what Baha'i is teaching.
Right.
Yes, here's a story, we put it out there, and I may believe that it is the inerrant word of God,
Right.
but it is up to you to decipher whether or not this is bringing you to a deeper realization of oneness, of kindness, of compassion, of generosity. And if it is not, we don't throw it to the dogs. We simply let it fall aside. Because as I heard around the table, if I were to put it into the Christian language, it would be seek first the kingdom of God. Seek first in this relationship, no matter how difficult it might be, the presence of God. And seek first in the midst of this story, the presence of light. And if there is no light there for me, I don't need to judge it or fight it or combat it. Simply let it fall away.
But the end, if you go to the next one, elimination of prejudices and superstitions and unfounded dogmas, he says this search for truth, this harmony of science and religion, has means or ways of doing it. Part of it is that because we're made in the image of God, try to understand some of these things that I mentioned are unfounded dogmas. And the unfounded dogmas, then they are not good for your intellect. They're not good for your spirit. And therefore put them aside. This is where the compassionate, learned people from Socrates to Richard Burdick help people in order to see the difference between superstitions and prejudices and truth of religion. So a lot of people need help. I went to that church, I truly understood that a lot of people need help. I also mentioned this, I was 16. I was in high school in Iran. And at that time, I was in 9th grade. I never forget that situation. The tradition wasn't like many traditional Christians take these things literally. Apparently there's a passage, I don't know if it's in Quran or some of the traditions of Quran, that Prophet Muhammad cut the moon in half. Now they see the moon, they think it is half the moon. Some of these fundamentalist Muslims believe in it, that the moon is cut in half. And he said to me, he was just like a fundamentalist Muslim, and I was a little teenager, and he said that Muhammad cut the moon in half. Excuse the language, what the hell has Baha'u'llah done that you believe in him? And I innocently but a little teasingly, I said, you don't know? Baha'u'llah cut the sun in half. And the sooner I said this, he got angry. He said, that is stupid. Why did you say? No, he didn't understand that, saying that 4 years long. But that's true. And then he chased me, and I just kept running. He didn't keep up with me.
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
This is the depth of prejudice and superstition across the planet. Don't look at this around here now.
The question that we like to ask here in this church is, how has the faith that you are following caused you to be kinder? How has it caused you to be more aware of love? Period. That's the only moon you have to cut in half. Am I more loving as a result of what I am learning?
May I say, I think one of the brightest gifts I was ever given in life was finding Unity Church at the age of 6. And one of the lessons I'll never forget going into YOU was this, independent search for truth. We spent 6 weeks, every week, individually choosing what faith we wanted to learn for the week. And we were encouraged every Sunday to go to a church of that particular faith. And after that 6 weeks was over, we spent another 4 to 6 weeks communicating what we learned and what we took from it and where we're going forward with that and how that relates to unity as a movement. And from that point forward, I've always been open to everything everyone has ever said. And I just had to express that because
That's the most important thing, to remain open.
Yeah. But I think it
To receive.
at a time of innocence at 6 years old was huge. And I really I wish that so many more children.
Those who are in this kind of environment are lucky.
Yeah.
Because, I've been across the globe and I've seen millions who are suffering because of what they have been indoctrinated with and they just cannot let loose. And that closes them. They could have PhD, they could have doctor. That's why when he talks in another passage part, and of course universal education is not only academic education. It is this kind of education, search for truth, harmony of science and religion, remaining free and unprejudiced and without superstition. All of these are related to make us a complete human being. Then he mentions the, equality of genders, races, and nations. Now, when you say unity believes in these things, this is true. But then if you go to the origin of religions, that's what Baha'u'llah calls these as the social teachings, which are essentially 19th century ideas that unity is and Baha'i Faith is, and many of these movements are. But here, he has codified them in all of these books. So on the question of, for example, equality of sexes, what do you think when you go into religions of the past, including Christianity, and how sexes and races, genders and races were treated? Judaism, Islam,
Well,
I'm more familiar with
women have
Islam.
been subjugated since the beginning of time.
Right. And religion has been a product in what you call social teachings of the situation of the environment. So therefore, from what I understand, KKK justified racism based on the Bible, right? And we have similar situations in Quran. So racism was not taken out of the holy text. People had slaves, right? So when we talk about these social teachings, in the minds of the Baha'is, this is like part of the scripture. It's part of the prayer. It's part of living your life. So if a Baha'i says that, if somebody says, I want to come and risk my name as a Baha'i, but I just don't accept the equality of men and women. He says, thank you, but you cannot become a Baha'i. Total, absolute equality between the rights of men and women is an essential principle of the Baha'i faith. We don't leave it to say, okay, whatever you like to do, do it. You can come to this church and be a member of it, but you can be racist or you can be sexist. Cannot be. That's why, Baha'u'llah says, what Baha'u'llah says in another one of his writings, that if you want to come this path, that's actually like a poem. He says in Farsi that if you want to come to this path, it is a difficult path, there's a lot of suffering, and in many ways he said, I don't really recommend it for you, but if you like the suffering, come and bring others with you. But if you're not ready for it, don't bother. So until the world becomes racially blind and from gender blind and not nationalist, because he says that if you are nationalist, if you are racist, if you believe in equality between genders, all of that, each one of those is a handicap of you signing your name as a Baha'i.
Would it include, I don't mean to put you on the spot here.
Please do.
Sexual orientation. Unity very openly receives gay people as members of our faith, equally as deserving of anything as a heterosexual. Would the Baha'i be the same?
I'll explain it the best I can. This is, actually, I and Andrew were discussing this, is that 99.9% of whatever Baha'u'llah said, I have tried to absorb and have read all the writings. This very question, he first explains that we are primarily soul, and this body is temporary. So therefore, in that respect, he's telling us that, no matter what sex you are, what gender you are, what race you are, it doesn't matter. You're really soul. And that soul is one and the same. However, a passage that I read, he has not changed that question of a homosexual act as being an acceptable act. He doesn't say that homosexuals are not equal to everybody else on the planet, but like all religions, he forbids homosexual act as well as sex outside of marriage. So this is the part that still the Baha'i, because Baha'i Faith does not allow, again, any divisions, is that this sect of Baha'is believes in this, that, and Universal House Justice is struggling with this, but from the last pronouncement that I see is this, that first and foremost, we are all children of the same God, we are essentially so, but Baha'u'llah, same as all manifestations of God, has not allowed sexual relationship out of marriage, and marriage is still between man and woman. That is the best I can explain that. Thank you.
But having said that, there are a lot of homosexuals who are Baha'is.
But yeah.
The membership is open to them.
Well, the fact that there's a wrestling
right.
With the question and the idea is an openness. There is no wall put up. No, it's an understanding that it's an evolving religion. Is what I see. Baha'i is an ever becoming, blossoming religion, and doors were not shut.
Right.
So
and that's why, Baha'is, we had the what you call 77 years of prophetic cycle when the Baha'u'llah and Abba were living and were explaining these in these 100 books. But then after that, the system that he set up, and we discuss it next time, is what we call the Universal House of Justice, which means across the globe, it doesn't matter from what country they are. I think at the present time, 2 or 3 of them are from US, 1 from Canada, Europe, and Australia. 9 people are elected once every 5 years, who they don't try to modify the Baha'i teachings. They try to explain the Baha'i teachings, but in a universal fashion, so that harmony would remain, and sectarianship and division is avoided.
I said I love that, because it means we will not allow division,
right.
the question, or the disagreement to divide us.
Exactly.
We will be a house facing the same way and continue wrestling with the question, as opposed to saying, okay, now we're separate.
Now we're separate, exactly.
That's important.
We didn't have time for going through this, we probably will do the next time. The next thing, he of course emphasizes universal education, auxiliary international language. Baha'u'llah has not chosen a language, but suggests that humanity, when we reach, he says we are at the point of reaching maturity. He said all what has happened up to now is that we have been like adolescents, all these bad things that we do, all the fighting, infighting, segregation, separation, all that. But when we reach the age of maturity, we need to have an international, we call auxiliary international language. So that all across the globe, from all across all countries, we can have a second language that we can all speak to each other. So that also has become one of the pillars. A Baha'i would have to, the world needs to choose a second language, and Baha'is need to promote it. Next one, I'll try to quickly finish it in 5 minutes. The economic justice is also very important. Baha'u'llah back then said it, and we still, Universal Justice tells us, and that the way the world is going, including this country, with regard to economic situation is, with regard to economic imbalance, is both unfair and just and not right. It's not right for probably 1,000 people in this country to have hoarded billions. And in this country alone, we have 40 million people who live below poverty level. And the suggestions, most economists, most fair economists have come to that conclusion now. One, he suggests progressive taxation that we had in this country until early 1980s, and it was reversed. But because Baha'u'llah says, don't enter into politics, don't enter into politics. But we know that that trend was reversed, so that from then on, the middle class basically lost ground more and more. And those who were wealthy, their wealth multiplied, the few billionaires. So, so in that regard, he suggests the importance of progressive taxation, that in some countries of Europe, like Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark and Holland, particularly, this question is taken care of. If you look at the index of happiness across the globe, you will see that these 4 or 5 countries are the happiest people on earth. Part of it is because of economic fairness, human rights and economic fairness. And this is through these methods. Profit sharing for the workers, progressive taxation, and social services, which they call it socialism, but education for somebody who can't pay for it, must be free for as much as they want. Education, healthcare, the basic minimum needs of humans with regard to housing and food. That's again another important issue for which hundreds of talks about Baha'u'llah deals with that and the Baha'i writings. Then he talks about universal peace through collective actions. These are the letters or tablets that he wrote to the kings and rulers of the world, including the Pope, as to the change that we need to see in the world. And ultimately, he says that when we go through these social teachings, the ultimate step is establishment of a World Federation of Nations. And this World Federation of Nations would be where they work for the good of mankind. We have United Nations, which of course Baha'u'llah had said it like 75 years before formation of the United Nations, but it is ineffective because a lot of things with regard to how they should function is not part of the Charter of the United Nations. Thank you so much, but if you can just have a little chat for 5 minutes, then we'll... Any final thoughts?
But with the idea that a lot of the social teachings are evolving, I guess, then with like economic equality and war and all these ideas that we constantly are evolving as people, I guess that kind of brings me back to, do you think that the idea of equality amongst the homosexual lifestyle and marriage might also possibly evolve with this faith?
So the equality is there. The right for marriage in Baha'i Faith is not there. That's, as you said, that could be a question, could be evolving. We wait for directives as they come in with regard to this. That's a good point. Eric Morris, please.
Well, I was going to say that both Holland and Norway have extensive holdings in the Alkafest North Sea oil fields, so they're getting both the royalties and the taxes off of that. And Norway in particular is in a most attractive economic situation. Holland's not bad, but Norway is
one of the best. That's true.
I'd be curious. I want to come back to the idea of progressive revelation. And there are elected people, 9 you said, that are the leaders that interpret what has already been revealed. Who becomes the receiver of the next revelation? And one of the parallels that I enjoy, Charles Fillmore said, I reserve the right to change my mind tomorrow because my understanding of God is forever evolving. And I believe the Unity movement has grown from his writings and from his revelation because we as a movement, a collective, have had revealed. Now, the difficulty is that does create a little bit of division in the Unity movement itself, the Fillmoreans versus those that are more interfaith. Who in the Baha'i Faith would be receiving the revelation where it would not cause division?
Yes. Now, there are two points. One is that Baha'u'llah and his son, the interpreter, the official interpreter of the writings, for the 77-year period, he has said he has revealed whatever needs to be revealed, not forever, but for the foreseeable future, with regard to auxiliary language, economic justice, equality between men and women, race, all these things we mentioned. But he says, not interpretation, but clarification of some of these issues is in your hands, which is the universal justice. Democratically elected, but there's a catch in here. He says you're democratically elected, but you're not accountable to the people who elected you. Now that is something to reflect upon. Which means that if majority of Baha'is said that, okay, we elected you, but we are against this thing that you said, they cannot do it. For these 5 years, that's also to keep that unity and harmony. For these 5 years, we accept the rulings. And then they go to the next 5 years. Another 9 would be elected. That was one aspect of it. The other aspect, so they elucidate, they try to explain, but they said that all interpretation is done, and there was a third point. The third point that Baha'u'llah, in the last passage of one of his books, very clearly says that each religion, including the Baha'i Faith, its time frame is 1,000 years. And he doesn't consider Baha'i Faith just for the few who become Baha'is, for humankind. And he says after 1,000 years, there has to be a new revelation. One person from across the globe of 10 billion people at that time would be inspired so deeply to revise whatever needs to be revised. Otherwise, we come to the same mess of sectarianship, of division.
So a new prophet, I remember you said 1,000 years.
1,000 years.
A new prophet will come with new revelation,
Exactly.
new understanding and truth.
Right.
Will that be the golden age, the next one, or do you have any notion?
My understanding is that the golden age should appear within this 1,000 years. He says that, those 77 years was a prophetic cycle, that these 100 books were written, and then from that point on until whenever this phase is finished, he calls it the formative age, where we are all working to sort this out as to how it can really be done. And the first time that I talked to you on August 24th, I'll never forget it, one of the things I mentioned, one of my best experiences, one of the things I mentioned, I said, I know that unity and Baha'is would one day become one because we're so in harmony in terms of how we think and what our thoughts are and where we're leading. And so he also basically says that this period is, and so the third phase, which is the golden age, my understanding is it would be within this 1,000 years.
So my final question, I know this is getting really good. Is the golden age an external shift, or is it all internal? Unity would say the golden age, using your language, would be all an internal. The second coming of the Christ is all going to be an internal experience, not an external one. Or is it happening at the same time?
Now, the golden age, he says the golden age is first understanding deeply all of these. And I'm hoping that in the next 50 years, I said, you allow me just to take the friends to one book at a time. But then he says that he's...
the golden age is internal or external or both?
Then he, I guess I mentioned it last time briefly, that I said 99%, but he says, but my understanding is that 90% of the challenge is transformation of us as human beings. to become mature human beings. But the 10% is an application of these social teachings on economics, gender, race, nationalism. Nationalism is a problem of rethinking us versus them. He says our mentality should become, this earth is one country, as he says, and mankind is citizens. We're all children of the same God. And he says, you are the flowers of one garden. You are the branches of one tree. These are the words that he uses. So, I know the friends are getting tired. This is 10 minutes over time. Thank you so much for your patience. We'll go through the history of the Baha'i Faith. Basically, I'll bring some of the books, and everyone will read a passage. So we'll make it interactive for next time. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.